Hello, everybody. Uh, Thank you for having me. And I'm so grateful to be a part of really a historical cum laude induction, very different than anyone's seen before, but will definitely be a memory for all of you. As a math teacher, and a lot of people think that goes along with being a public speaker. Um, the two are very different skill sets. So I kind of contemplated coming up with an equation or a proof that really emulated what I was feeling about how important this is for all of us. Then I was told that I needed to fill up a certain amount of time, and I highly doubt that you all brought your calculators with you to this meeting. Right now, I have this feeling. It really is the same feeling that I've had in remembering conversations that I had with friends over dinner or when out talking in public, and people are just so concerned with the state of the world. And while I do have a lot of concerns about the future of the world, knowing the young people that I work with and how they will impact the world really kind of lessens that worry a lot. I That feeling of hope is exponential right now because I know the people that I'm speaking with. Each one of you has boundless curiosity and wonderment of the future. And well, I've stood in front of you during some mathematical arguments as well as discussing community service related projects. This feels bigger to me. It feels different. I think it's because you all have achieved something academically at Albuquerque Academy that truly is great. And I want to do this time justice. It's very personal to me because it's young people like you who give me hope and make me grateful to be where I am right now. Well, maybe in life, maybe not in my living room. I started organizing this talk what feels like 100 times, wanting to impact you in a way that each one of you will undoubtedly impact others. I even looked up inspirational speeches and tried to say, okay, these are the things that I need to say. But really, when it came down to it, in order to make an impact, we have to share from ourselves. And so, what I'd like to do today is I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself, some of the turning points in my life, and some of the people who really impacted those turning points to make it where I followed a bit of an unconventional path to be where I am right now. I always loved school and I always loved to learn. Math was my favorite subject, obviously. Although not always the easiest subject for me, I really enjoyed it. I loved that once I figured out what the solution was, I could stop and move on. I say this, and at first, it was one of the hardest classes in my life. But as I progressed through math, it's the way I began to see the world, and it's an integral part of who I am today. As any of you have had me as a teacher, and the rest of you will soon come to find out, writing has always been a bit of a challenge for me, even more so because I didn't always enjoy it. So my high school years were filled with teen angst, what I looked like, who my friends were, what I wanted to do or be when I grew up, and how I was going to get there. And so that meant that I was going to have to learn to become a better writer. And in 10th grade, along came Debbie Furstenberg, my 10th grade English teacher. She was dynamic and lively. She was passionate about language and literature, and it was contagious. Although I was in a few honors classes, English wasn't one of them. I was placed in her regular English class, and in the first week, we were diagramming sentences. Literally the mathiest thing you can do in English, deciphering parts of the sentence. In essence, the prime factorization of English. After I had dissected the fine art of sentence parts and clause configuration consistently for a week, I took a test. After that test, Ms. Furstenberg asked me to stay after class. That is one thing a high achieving student never wants to be asked to stay after class. Had I blown my test, I was really fearful. And then she said something even more frightening. She said, "You need to switch to my honors English class." Huh? But I'm a terrible writer. I was baffled. She sternly looked at me over a stack of essays and said, "Not for long." I reluctantly believed that she knew something that I didn't, and I changed my schedule. I will never forget my first paper. It was a compare and contrast essay on two short stories by Eudora Welty. I was introduced for the first time to a Pulitzer Prize winning short story writer, and she blew my mind. I turned in the paper. Did I think it was the best thing I had ever written? That I'm not sure of. But what I do remember is that I worked really hard on that paper. I got it back, and it was a solid C. It was at that moment, really within seconds, that I promptly snuck off to the counselor's office to have my schedule return to normal. On the way, I stopped in the C Hall bathroom to cry, wipe my tears, and appear sane and intentional when I walked into the counselor's office to explain that there had been a terrible mistake. On the counselor's door informed me that she would be gone for a week. What kind of human leaves for an entire week when the state of the world could be completely falling apart? So I had a week, a quiet, strange yet fascinating week. I really enjoyed listening to my colleagues and understanding the impact of literature on so many people. And by the end of that week, I wanted to stay. I learned to read the classics, still not my jam, but I learned to read them. And although very apprehensively, I could write an essay worth reading. At some point, I stopped caring about the grade. The next year, I graduated from high school, top 10% of over 600 students. And I knew without a doubt, I had it set in stone that I was going to become a child psychiatrist. I fully understood that my parents came from limited means, so I was going to pay for college myself. But that's okay. I knew I could do it all. I had been awarded almost a full scholarship to UNM to study psychiatry. I had an awesome job in an upscale restaurant, and I had just been hired as an intern at a children's hospital. Just as I had thought, all of my plans were falling in line. Then the pressure hit me. The pressure of my classes and studying, of my keeping up with my job and my internship. I left each day of my internship in tears. I couldn't believe the stories that I was hearing about the challenges that these innocent children faced. And my heart couldn't take it. I couldn't be a psychiatrist. But what now? I had had all these goals and I knew that they were all in line. And when I realized I couldn't be a child psychiatrist, I didn't know what I was going to do. I sat down to register for my next semester of classes and I literally froze. It was my mom who gave me the key. She said, "Listen, Ilana, find something that you love to do, and then you will be a success." I'd been so wrapped up on what I thought I wanted to do that I really didn't have any idea what I loved. To give myself some time to discover, I took a little time off from school and I moved to Hawaii to live with my father. That year, I learned to surf. I learned some basic Japanese, and I spent some incredible time with my feet in the sand. Yet, for all my thinking, no great passion arose. Still puzzling over what to do next, I accepted an invitation of a friend of mine to stay in Seattle, Washington for a while. There, I took one class and audited another at the University of Washington, in addition to working as an accounts receivable clerk at the largest floral warehouse in Seattle. When I say that, I can still smell the warehouse. It was just such an incredible place to work. After a year of working there, I was offered a great job managing hundreds of accounts. At this time, I was making more money than most real adults that I knew. Yet my heart didn't feel full. I missed New Mexico. I missed the mountains. I missed my mom. And I decided after another year that I would come back to New Mexico. At that time, I was 22 years old. It was weird, but I didn't think that I had wasted any time. I didn't think that I was old. I just knew that I was ready now. I'd always loved math and I'd always loved helping people. And growing up, I had these strong, amazing friends who were confident in a lot of things, but not in math. And I was like, I could do that. I could become a math teacher and I could help instill confidence and make people feel empowered with mathematics. I finished up my prerequisites, and during my junior year, I had a teacher for my educational psychology class named Roxana Moreno. She rode up to the first day of class on a motorcycle, parked on the sidewalk, and got off with red velvet bell bottoms. Her class was fascinating. Understanding how the brain makes information meaningful was incredibly intriguing to me. But it wasn't just the information, it was her. I hung on her every word. She was passionate and engaging. And when I look back on it, she was kind of a rock star. We became friends, and as I learned more about her prior to becoming an educational psychologist, she was a lawyer and she didn't love it. I'd heard that story before. I was offered several teaching jobs during my senior year, but I chose to accept a position at Solomon Schechter Day School, later called the Jewish Day School of Arts and Sciences. And before taking this position, I took 2 months and traveled Spain and Europe, took the GMAT, and registered for classes to start my master's in educational psychology. Teaching was wonderful, and I loved making math and science meaningful for students. One of the parents at the time had a dear friend named Susan John, who ran the summer program at Albuquerque Academy. I met with her and took an additional job teaching a self-designed course called Computation and Creativity. This was 16 years ago. It took me some time to graduate with my master's degree, as I was a full-time teacher, summer school teacher, and a research assistant on 2 National Science Foundation grants with Dr. Moreno, all while working through my classes. It was a lot to handle, but I was ready. I left teaching to work full-time as an educational psychologist, working on several multi-million-dollar grants assessing cognitive diversity in New Mexico between Anglo, Hispanic, and Native American students. During my tenure, I married my best friend, and 1 year before my graduation and deep into my master's thesis, I found out that I was going to bring another person onto this planet. One of the hardest things that I have ever done in my life was to write a 53-page thesis on the cognitive attributes associated with adolescent math success, with very little sleep, and nursing a child. I typed the entire thing, I think, with one hand, and I graduated with my master's cum laude. I made the difficult decision to leave my job and stay home with my precious being. I started my own tutoring company so I could stay home with my son, and 3 years later, another little person graced us with her presence. I have no idea how he knew, but when I was ready to return to work outside of my home, Paul Demers, the respected math department at Albuquerque Academy, called me and asked me to interview for a position. The rest is history. I now have something that I love to do. Today, I stand in front of you as a mother, a friend, a daughter, and a math teacher at the most incredible school I could ever hope to work with. Not because I followed the path that I set out for myself when I was 18, but because the path that presented itself to me, a path of adventure and love and twists and turns, Many of you in this room will find yourself following a path set for you by yourself or by somebody else and come to forks in these paths. Remember that your path may not unfold exactly the way you thought it would, but it will unfold and in ways that are certain to challenge and amaze you. Perhaps no one knew this better than the great American author Eudora Welty, who wrote, "It is our inward journey that leads us through time, forward or back, seldom in a straight line, most often spiraling. Each of us is moving and changing with respect to others, and as we discover, we remember. Remembering, we discover." And most intensely do we experience this when our separate journeys converge. How proud I am to know all of you, and how pleased I am that our journeys have converged. Thank you so much.